There's no better time than the present to begin that podcast you've always wanted to start. And nowadays, it's even easier with sites such as Anchor.fm. It's free. Anchor provides creation tools at your disposal that allow you to both record and edit your podcast right in your browser. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, making it easily heard on things such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere podcasts can be heard. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. To begin, download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor.fm to get started. Ladies, gentlemen, and everything in between, this is the introductory episode of the Susurrus podcast. I'm your host, Simbitica, and joined with me I have...
the lovely Ray Sonar. That will be me.
And the disgruntled Radiri who's forced to be here.
That's an exaggeration. No one forced him to be here.
He forced himself to come here.
He forced himself to come here.
As I have a gun to my head, but whatever.
We are doing this over Discord. I don't know how that's possible.
Whatever you say.
Trust me, we'll find out very, very, very soon.
So yeah, this is sort of just going to be us talking about various topics that we care about. Your usual affairs in regards to a podcast. But how do we feel about podcasts? In general, like the medium itself, just dudes talking into microphones, or...
You know, I can't really remember when the first time I actually listened to a podcast was. It's kind of that thing that I just kind of grew into, and I was like, you know, it got to a point where a couple of friends and I would just talk, and we were just like, hey, so you listen to podcasts? And I'm like, yes, but I don't know how.
Well, for me, it's like, okay, clearly we've never hosted a podcast before. But with me, I don't necessarily watch like real podcasts. I watch YouTuber podcasts. So more like non-traditional kind of, not like, say like there's like a bar of like what a podcast should be. I doubt like most of the YouTuber podcasts like meet that bar.
Is that really?
But that's what I listen to.
Is that really fair to say though? Like for me, like all the podcasts I've seen where it's like, I get you with YouTube, you have the added, like you get to see their faces and that kind of adds another depth. And then you have like real podcasters, you can say like, well, quote unquote, real podcasters. You only have their voice and they only can use their inflection to kind of spice it up. But still, like all the podcasts I've watched have usually been like from a YouTuber. And I watch some podcasts on SoundCloud for school assignments and stuff, but mainly in my enjoyment comes from like YouTube and stuff. And it's usually comedians, which kind of tells a lot, but I don't know. In my experience, like podcasts been like insightful yet funny.
See, now that's the thing. That's the only thing I have questioned. You said the words, I watch podcasts, but at that point you're just watching a video. So I don't think watching podcasts is necessarily a thing, but like, think about it. Podcasts are only meant for us to listen. So where do we draw the line between a video and a podcast?
Well, I think it's like the video is just like a second, like an optional like level of like how you can ingest the media. Because like the H3 podcast, for instance, I know that podcast, like if you're into the world of like YouTuber podcasts, that one gets a lot of flack. But with the H3 podcast, it's like, yeah, there is like the video portion, but I've personally at my job sometimes that I used to have, rest in peace, my job. I would actually like listen to that podcast, like no audio, and it worked just fine as a podcast. So I don't think it being having visuals, like this is gonna have visuals when I upload it on YouTube, and I think the visuals just kind of make it's like you have something to stare at, you know. I don't think a podcast I think the line draws where like the podcast itself and like the discussions relying too much on you having visual context to understand what's going on. That's when it kind of loses its weight as a podcast.
Well, I don't know, because like whenever I listen to... Oh, sorry.
No, proceed. Go.
Sure, no. I mean, like when I listen to podcasts, like I'm never usually looking at the screen when I do. So you can catch me like, you know, listening to a podcast while I mow the lawn, or while I'm about to go to sleep, or while I'm wallowing in self-despair about the inevitability of life. But like, I don't know about the inclusion of visuals in a podcast. I feel like at that point you're just listening to like a video novel or like something of
Well,
similarity.
well, I feel like
I'm not sure video.
well, not to cut you off,
Yeah.
not to cut you off, but I feel like you before like you had a podcast and that was more of like an adult thing. That was more of a like a that's kind of weird package information just as an audio file, and that was mainly like old school in a sense. But then you had like this paradigm shift where like podcasts were done by YouTubers. You started having video essays done, and that's when like YouTube was only for like funny cat videos to like let's have some well thought out videos where it's like we trying to tell a message, and I feel like as Jacob was saying like having the video part of the medium is only to supplement or to even have clarification because even if I'm explaining something and I'm using certain words, you may not be able to understand me fully, and you would have to go search it up or later. But if I have an image on the screen now, make it easier. And it's like that's when you start having like the video essay niche in between like a video and a podcast, where it's like, yeah, you have something on the screen, yeah, you have images, but that's not you don't need it. It's only there if you want to see it. Because I know many like Core A Gaming, they do a lot of video essays, and I'll just have like their whole playlist on as I'm like walking around, just listening to them, not even looking at them, because I know a lot about gaming as it is, and it's more just for me to listen. And I feel like it all comes down to how you use it or how you use the medium that they put out there.
Yeah, no,
That's fair.
I agree to I agree to points of that. Yeah, I don't know. So that said, with a podcast, I think what for us makes a good podcast and what makes a bad podcast.
I feel like that's subjective because what I view as good may not be seen as good by someone else.
That's
So,
why I asked.
well, if I could keep talking, maybe I could respond to that. But I was gonna say, people listen to what they want to listen, right? So if I'm gonna be listening to a podcast on the history of the Roman Empire, and there's a slight inaccuracy in that, like I'm gonna think like, oh god, it's a bad podcast. But as somebody who's interested in, let's say, the Roman Empire, I listening to anything would make that a good podcast in my mind. So I think the idea of just having like good versus bad can't be really applied to a podcast because I feel like people are going to listen to what they want inevitably, and that can kind of apply to a lot of things. Like I don't know, I feel like good versus bad is entirely subjective.
So let's say for like your personal preference, let's break it down to say you're going into a podcast and there's no like prior like context attached to it to like get you invested right away. What would the podcast need to be like to get you into it? Like say
Okay,
it's not
that's
a
fair.
historical podcast or it's not like a YouTuber you watch. What would have to what would be needed to like get you into it?
Now I know that I'm being ironic in saying this, but I'd say that voice quality would definitely be a good thing. Like, come on.
I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah, like you got to have that crisp voice quality, and I know for a fact that recording on a MacBook's internal mic is not crisp, but it's what you got right now.
It's what you got, yeah.
It's what you got right now. But that being said, like a podcast, like to me, feels like someone's like taking over the contents in my head and just letting it flow. So when I listen to a podcast, I feel like somebody is in my head talking about certain things and really just making me open my mind up to a bunch of possibilities.
But I feel
And that all like
wait, Chai.
Yeah, go on.
Not like I'm sorry to cut you off, but it's like, well, we could like I feel like right now you could just give like a textbook definition of a good podcast the same way how you give like a textbook definition of a good paper or a good book. It has to be engaging. At the end of the day, like you're not going to watch something that bores you. And yes, that's subjective, but at the end of the day, no one's going to put themselves through something they don't like. Like the only like the times I watched the listened to the podcast for school, like I didn't like it, but because I had to, I listened to it. But anything I do for myself, it has to be something I find pleasurable. And like you could say that quality of voice, the use of words, like all that helps. But like if your whole attitude isn't engaging enough to keep someone around, as an entertainer of any level, no matter what medium you use, if you're not entertaining, like you don't have an audience.
That's a fair point, and I actually agree with that. But I think that goes for any art form, though.
That's what I was trying to say. It's like a blanket statement.
Well, yeah, when you're saying like
Yeah.
what's good about any medium, like there's a lot of crossover. Like for me, I think a good podcast is the conversations have when you listen to it, you don't feel like you're wasting your time listening to it. Like you're getting something out of it, be it either like
Mhm.
a new perspective on a topic or just like enjoyment of like the charisma of the host and like the chemistry between like if there's several hosts or a
Mhm.
guest. Like a podcast I really like at the moment from YouTubers that I watch. It's called Cold Ones. That podcast I watch because it's pure like it's a really fun podcast to listen to because they're just getting drunk as hell and just saying like whatever, and it's the chemistry with like that the hosts have with like their guests. It's really like interesting to listen to, and it's funny. It's a funny podcast, in my opinion. I find it funny, but
Mhm.
um, I also find that like I don't know, just like if I'm like it has to not feel like like a chore to listen to because like podcasts tend to be like anywhere from like half hour to like 40 minutes, like an hour. Like it has to not feel like a chore to listen to it.
Mhm.
But
Like the ones we have to listen to for school, like that feels like a chore to listen to
look,
them
true. But that's why I'm
because
saying like
we're being forced to listen to them.
that's
Go
why
on, kid.
like that's why you have like well, I know like I don't know like I don't want to pull statistics out my ass, but like I know like comedians that have podcasts and stuff, people are going to listen to that. People are going to find it funny. People are going to like just instantly be drawn into it. People who like Roman stuff going to be instantly drawn to that. But I know like if it's like political issues, that's another thing. People are going to be interested about that, even if they don't like it, but they're engaged into it because they don't like it so much. And like that's one of the
Yeah.
weird parts of it, where it's like you don't necessarily have to like it for you to be drawn in.
Actually, it's funny you say that because I'm just trying to remember the first podcast that I really listened to. Not counting the ones that I listened to, like, for school or whatever. I think it was sitting down with Kumail and Emily. Like, if you guys know Kumail and Johnny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's unconventional, but, like, they go on such a wide range of topics. I think the first one I listened to was about how it was right around the time COVID hit. So at that point, we were all taking our transition into the virtual world, like, really seriously. Everyone was like, oh, and everyone was going crazy about it. I think that podcast was about pigeons in the backyard. Like, I don't remember. But I remember it was this really, really, really obscure topic. But what really sold it for me, and this goes back to what Sambitica was saying, is the chemistry between the two. Now, Kumail and Emily are obviously, they're married. They live together. So watching their dynamic, not so much as husband and wife, but more as like co-podcast host, was pretty interesting because it really made the whole experience a lot more enjoyable. And it's really hard for me to describe exactly what was so captivating about it, except for the fact that it felt rather natural and unforced. So it's
The world's
entirely
doing this
subjective.
shit, and then you have I'm over here watching a podcast or listen to a
Oh
podcast
look, a
about
a
pigeons.
bird landed on a fence in the backyard. Let's make a podcast.
Well, no,
No,
it was
I'm
like
busting
so
chops.
disconnecting.
I'm
No, I
busting
know,
chops.
I
Uh,
know. But
there
it
is
was so disconnecting from everything. I'm sorry, but it was like so disconnected from everything that was actually happening that it kind of put things into perspective. As odd as that sounds,
That's
like
at least
yeah,
oh,
you are
yeah.
sane. I don't know what's wrong with everyone else with this transfer to the virtual world. Like public schools is atrocious. Like it's actually sad. You have teachers like telling students like I need you to be here in this Zoom room while I go take a break for 30 minutes and then leave, and it's like what?
It
Like
doesn't feel real. It's like it's not real to them,
it does. It's not real. It's just not right.
especially when they're younger, like in kindergarten.
Yo, could you imagine taking your kid to like Zoom kindergarten?
Oh no, I don't have to think. I have to watch my aunt and deal with it.
Oh my
My
god, that's so
cousin.
weird.
My
That's so
cousin.
weird to
I don't
me.
even
My
know
cousin
why
is
we
like
still have
starting
to.
fourth grade.
I don't know why they still going to school. In my opinion, I don't want to undermine. I don't like undermining education as a university student myself. But it's like all the classes that they go to, like if it's not main subjects or like social studies or like just general news, what are they really there for? Why do I
Yeah,
need like why do I need to send my sister to like you need to be in this advisement class for 45 minutes when they ask you how are you feeling about these Zoom classes that we're taking that are pointless? Like, come on.
like put it on pause or something. I'm 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 also a university students. I have to.
Mm.
I'm taking a like video production class, and my professor expects us to go out and make films in groups of 4. we are in a pandemic. Why are you having me go outside and talk to people and make film like? And he's like, oh, and you have to like you're all working on the film together, like both on camera and like behind the camera and whatnot. But you have to like observe like 6 feet distance. Do you know how hard it's gonna be? Because I know the camera they're letting us. Do you know how hard it is to go over takes when you're 6 feet away from the freaking screen?
Yeah, that kind of unless I just imagine you carrying like a 25-inch monitor behind you
I
instead of
can't
an
like
actual
like that's not
monitor.
realistic. There's no way I can carry
It's
like a monitor that large
expectations.
around.
Like
Yeah, and then like
it's just wild.
and I know the cameras we're using, they're giving us Sony A7S2s, which first of all, flex because that's actually a really good camera. Go off our university, but come on, those screens are tiny as hell. You could barely see it when you're like 2 feet away from it, let alone 6. And then he's also like, you can't film any scenes inside if there's another person there. It has to be outside. So we're like very limited. I was texting our
Nice.
mutual friend that I'm in the class with. I was like, dude, these films are gonna be like real weird and artsy and shit because there's no way we're gonna do any like normal filmmaking in these circumstances with this like.
I find it funny how the university is light on the professor, but the professor forgets how the university is light on them in their classes and all that. But they have unreal expectations, like teachers and professors. It astounds me.
He literally
Could you imagine the
said.
whole thing just turning into? Oh, I'm sorry. Go
He
on, go on.
literally said, "Oh, I know that under the given circumstances, it's gonna be difficult, but we're gonna figure it out." Like what?
It's like the thing where it's like where all the companies are like, we know this is a trying time for all of you, but and then they just go off and just ruin your day.
Yeah, yeah. It's like when anyone opens with, "I know that this is blank, but," that's like shorthand for I don't care. I don't give a shit.
Like why? Like I don't get how the responsible adults. Well, I know I'm an adult as well, but I'm just saying, like the responsible aged adults that's been in society for so long can be like, suck it up. Like it's not like I never. Had
When
to go
I was
through it.
your age,
Like I don't know.
Oh my
The
goodness.
only thing that I'm enjoying about this, to kind of circle it back just a tad bit, is like the art that comes out of stuff like this. One thing about art is that when people are like thrusted into dark scenarios and their minds are in dark places, unfortunately, that's when they're in the mindset and they create amazing art or just like really interesting art. Like, well, it's like music's one of those things that's like really reflective of like the zeitgeist, kind of like that's
Mhm.
how like people judge like the mood of things like from like decades past. They look at how the music was. Like for example, around usually around war times, like during the Vietnam War or like Cold War and all that, the music had like a certain like theme that they would like go by, things like that. And definitely the music for like this situation, this pandemic, the music's been good. It's been interesting. Charlie XCX put out a really good album about that.
Okay, we're just gonna ignore
No,
Cardi B for a
but
second.
what's good about it is that it gives people there's a point. I have a point, I promise. Is that there is a point where it's like because everyone's home more, people are like not being afraid to like create or like try new things.
No, I get you.
Like-
Like you, like again, another
Us
thing,
with this podcast.
like being removed from your everyday life and society that helps place limiters on you by keeping you in check by doing the same mundane tasks every day. You have that expressive freedom now to have time to do whatever you want. But then it's like, yeah, but like then you have people that's going through depression, people going through all these mental issues, and then like, yeah, express yourself through your art. But then like when someone cut off their ear, so we're going to be like, oh, the art was amazing though. Like, oh my god.
I mean, the art was amazing though, was it
Oh
not?
my god.
We can say that because we're like after the fact. But no, that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm saying it's unfortunate that that's how like art can be, because usually the best art does come from an unfortunate circumstance.
So I'm just gonna lock you in the basement while you edit these videos and make sure you come up with something good. Okay.
I'm about to come
he's
out
gonna
of
do
like
that.
Martin Scorsese or some shit.
I mean, listen, he's gonna lock himself in the basement anyway to like edit this thing, so I don't think we have to worry about that one.
Technically, I was telling what was it? I was telling Raisonar this before we were recording. I'm turning like the rooms in my house into like an office kind of, and that room is like on the top floor of my house. So technically, I'm locking myself in my attic. That
Even better.
so kind of like the inverse of locking myself in the basement.
What movie
Okay.
reference? Well, no, Harry Potter. Nah, he was
Actually,
under
no,
the
hold up. I
stairs.
have a going back to the idea of like the troubled genius. I remember a quote. I don't know where I heard it. I think it was at a museum. I just saw it as I was walking by. But I read a quote that said, "You can't truly make music unless you feel heartbreak." So that relates to the idea that like there comes a certain power from change and sadness and depression
Yeah,
that lets people make such like a influential art. Now, how does that come through? It's something I think really interesting. Like, what is the how do you know that a certain experience has unlocked the artist within you?
it kind of just happens. You have like with me, the way it manifests is I get all these emotions. Not saying like heartbreak specifically, but like say something like happens that puts me in a sad state. The emotions will like well up, and then I'll be like, okay, I have all these emotions sitting here. Now what? What do I do with it? Oop, I hit my mic stand. How do I like exert it? And then that can be either I write something, I draw something, I record, like that's sort of how it does it. But I like what you said, how the art that comes from like heartbreak can be influential, because obviously when anyone mentions like, oh, making art when you're sad, people think of Kanye, right?
Why?
And then because lately, hear me
Oh,
out,
you better have
because
something good.
at least in our current day, I think, I heard someone call him like our generation's Van Gogh or something like that. I'm not sure how much I buy into that, but I see where they're coming from, because Kanye's a person that like time and time again we see him have like public meltdowns, but the music's always good is the thing.
Mm, mm,
And then
mm,
even Kim
mm,
herself said that like
mm.
I read somewhere that Kim herself said that like him going off his meds is like part of his creative process, which is a very unhealthy part of his creative process. But like we got the album Yay out of that. And in my opinion, Yay is a really good album, and it's a really good like dive into Kanye's like mental state and his mental illness, and also like by that extent Kitsy Ghost as well. But with Heartbreak, specifically 808s and Heartbreak, that album that came into my mind because you said influential, and I consider that album really influential because like the whole moody like R&B scene. I
Mhm.
I like pretty much Drake's entire career. He owes his career to 808s and Heartbreak, I feel, and obviously he's like one of the biggest artists of like the previous decade.
Well, I feel you.
Now,
It's just
mm,
not like look aside my disinterest in Kanye. I'm not really into music like that to really understand it that much, but I do understand like the whole feelings and emotions playing a part into crafting something that we want to see. Because at the end of the day, like everyone has a little bit of Schadenfreude in them, in the sense of like we want our lives to be better, and when we see misfortune in others, not that we feel excited or happy, but it reminds us where it's a reminder of where we are in life, and we're not that low. And it's kind of bad to say, but it's
No, that's true. That's totally true.
that
like
is
you
true.
see the
That is
guy
true.
working at McDonald's, you know you don't want to be him. So it's just a
Yeah, it's
reminder.
like thank God I'm not that guy. But another side to that is that it's a reminder of humanity, of one's humanity.
Mm.
Because sometimes, if it's not that you're in a better place than that of who you're like listening to, it could be that you're in a similar position, and you
True.
know that okay, someone else is going through something similar.
Empathy is big. I give you that. Empathy is big.
Oh, empaths, love them or hate them, they do be empathic.
So now I want to propose a bit of a question or a bit of a talking point. So, how do you guys think that the increased importance of mental health in our society contributes to art in general, and like the emotion that's associated with art? Do you think people feel more comfortable about the idea of mental illness and the fact that they might have it and that it might influence them? Or do you think that people shy away from it when they believe that like there's certain stigma surrounding it? What are your thoughts on that?
I feel like a stigma is slowly but surely melting away, but art art's a funny thing. Art has the ability to normalize certain concepts and ideas, you
Mhm.
know, and that's why like representation in like television and film is preached a lot because it, whether or not you want to believe it, it does have a level of impact. It really does. But sometimes like with that, there can be like the negative side effects of that. Like when you have shows of like a poor quality that are spearheading the awareness of a certain topic, it can be kind of bad. Like it's bad when the program that's like really revolutionizing conversations around like mental illness is freaking 13 reasons why. Like that's a problem, you know? And I'm not gonna get into that because I feel like
Wow,
I
you
could
didn't have to
talk
go
about
there.
I could talk about that show for an entire podcast. I feel so. I'm not gonna get into it now. But
Episode 2 coming your way.
there is that responsibility of the the revolutionary like programs that occur that do address topics in a way never thought possible before. There is like a level of like respect you have to give the topic.
Well, true, but also there's two ways to really look at this. There's two layers. You have the way that media, like performers and all that, portray it in their medium itself, but then you have the culture within the medium creators that is closed off to the public, and they have their own customs and shibboleths that we don't even know about that normalizes uh, inhumane ways to even create the content to make their living. And we don't, and I don't know what that is. I'm not an entertainer like that. I'm not in these inner circles, but I do know, like, as a medium going forward and the messages that they give, like, we live in. I don't like the term PC political correct because I feel like no, it's just being a good person. But
Yeah,
we have,
literally.
like, even terms like neurotypical with mental health and just stuff like that. We have it's a whole different vibe than it was past 10 years ago because of media, because of activists, because of just bringing awareness to the topic. But again, I'm never gonna know until, like you said, how Kim's came out about going off his meds. I wouldn't have known stuff like that unless someone from the inner circle told me. I don't know their customs. I don't know their traditions. I don't know the, like, oh, this recording studio, like, we do this to get our artists pumped. I don't know what that is. We got to make them sad. Like, do we take them off meds? Do we give them meds? Do we, like, I don't know. Like, again, we have this whole thing where, like, drugs, like, oh, rock stars be on drugs, but we never, there's no way for us in the outside circle, unless we spy on them, to know what they really need to do to come up with these moving, heart passionate songs. Like, it's just, I don't know.
That's true. From the outside in, it's kind of like outside looking in, we have that perspective of like tragedy makes good art. Like, like some of my more favorite songs from the 1975 are the one where where Matt Healy's singing about his like drug problems. Like those are some of my more favorite songs because like those songs are like well written, objectively speaking. But yeah, yeah, that's actually I never thought of it like that. Wow, look
Just
at
See,
that.
it's interesting that you bring that up because the idea that there are such troubled people in our lives, but we see them as like influencers and like visionaries. What it brings a new meaning to the term visionary or individual, right? Now, I don't want to go and I don't want to say, oh, everyone who does drugs is bad. That's obviously not the case. Most certainly not the case at all. But the idea of outside influences changing the very definition or changing the idea of how we perceive visionaries and individuals in our lives, that speaks quite a bit about how we think about society in general. What would you say about that?
Yeah, I see that.
well,
I'm not sure if what I just said made 100% sense.
It
but
kind of did.
no, it's just when you said
I
the
feel
term
like
visionary, it's. I feel like visionary isn't something that you can earn. It's something that, well, you do earn the title of visionary, but it's something that,
it gets attributed to like people just tack it on to you like
like it's like that thing where like you can't call yourself nice, but other people can call you nice, right?
there you go. Like,
yeah,
yeah, I can say, like, oh, I'm a nice person, but unless everyone around me recognize that I'm nice, then
it holds little weight.
there you go. That's where you was talking. I was like, yeah, but it's like you have to be added. And then it's like society is so fickle with what's a visionary or what's right because Hitler was a visionary during World War II.
In his time, in his
Technically,
time.
In his rise to power. Like,
It's like in 6th grade, I had a science teacher that said, "Oh, if you asked me, mind you, I don't know why my 6th grade science teacher was saying this to me, a 6th grader, but she said one time during class we were having a lesson about like manipulation and like I don't know why she was teaching us a lesson on that, but she said, if you asked me what the 3 most influential leaders in the world were, I would say Jim Jones, Adolf Hitler, and Fidel Castro. Like not even like saying whether or not you agree with their stances or their morals, but just in terms of pure ability to influence and rally people. Yeah.
I think that's a very fair point because, and we can get into leadership styles and all that a little later, but visionary, people tend to have that as like a positive concept, right? Like, oh, I want to be called a visionary, I want to be called a visionary. But I don't think people realize that you can be called a visionary for something hella negative. It's the whole idea of infamy, right? Like you said,
Yeah.
like Hitler, people would say that Hitler's a visionary. I don't think Hitler's a visionary, I'll say that.
Well, I
But
mean, he had a very
not...
clear vision.
No, and then I feel bad for
clever.
laughing, and then it's like the real funny thing is like not funny, haha, but about Hitler, he had a book, and his book made like millions of dollars, and then like today worth billions of dollars. But the thing is, no one claims it, and no one feels like they should claim it, and then it's like that's where that I feel like you could be infamous, you can have like the money there and everything, but who's gonna claim or align themselves with your vision if it's something that's so twisted or like have such a negative connotation in a sense? That's
Well,
where
apparently back then, an entire country.
well, I don't even want to start about debating about the Germans.
No, we're not. But
all right, so somehow we made ourselves go from podcast to Hitler.
It kind of plays into the idea of just it would be beneficial and healthier if art was approached in a different way, as opposed like put more of your emotion, your passion, and your weight into like the content it's up, as opposed to the person or entity that creates it. Like if we put less stock and investment into like the individuals themselves, that could like alleviate some, because when you reach a certain level of celebrity status, there is a lot of pressure there, because like Billie Eilish, that I don't know why she came into my head, but actually no, I know why. Billie Eilish is super young. She's like what, a year, like
she's 2 years younger than us.
She's 2 years younger than us. Like she's younger than us, and she has millions, like that's not even an understatement. Millions of like people that look up to her, that idolize her, that literally like if she shat on the ground, they would eat it and kiss it and say thank you. Like that level of loyalty and dedication, like someone at that age, God knows what goes on in her, what that does to her head. And it's like that, and that's just because that's not even just because she's like younger. Like I'm just saying that her being younger makes it harder on her, but that can be the case for like most of these celebrities that are on like high platforms, because even like when you have a following of like a smaller size, that can like become a lot of pressure on your head.
That's fair, because like the whole thing, that power corrupts, right?
Yeah.
Well, I won't even say like power corrupts. It's just like too much. Well, wait, was that a Kanye song?
Honestly,
he had a song
probably
called
Kanye
Power,
song.
but unrelated. Trust me.
Wait. Question here. I want to pose a funny question. What is the smallest amount of power that you've seen someone abuse? Like, what is the smallest amount of power?
Funny that you say that. Funny that you say that. I went to motor vehicle. Oh, okay. Quick story. I had to get a license again because my wallet got stolen. Sad times related.
Oh, I remember that.
But I needed to get my license again, and I waited until because the lines at DMV was like extremely long due to COVID, and they're still long. So I woke up at like 4:00 in the morning to go over there, and I waited out there until 8:00 till they're open. And then they say they do not do licensing at this DMV. I'm like, shucks on me. I should have did some research beforehand. I take that in. So I decided I'm going to be the responsible, like custom. Technically, it's a service they provide. So I am a customer. I'm going to be the polite customer, and I'm going to wait in line. And I'm just going. They passed out this flyer saying which, like if I can send it to Sambatica, he could like post it right now. This like map on the back, and then like boxes and stuff checking off like where they do the licensing. I swear to fucking God, the front of the fucking page have X's on everything, and I'm like, how the fuck am I supposed to know where to do licensing? I know like I recognize the asterisks on the left meant that those where you could take your driver's test, but I just needed to redo my license, and those didn't correlate. My thing is, I try to talk to like the security guard tries to explain it to me, and he's like, I was like, oh, you understand the paper to me. She early in the morning, so you have a long day ahead of you, lady. So I don't know why you're being crabby now. It was like, oh, the paper should be explanatory enough. Go next. I was like, let me calm. The guy just told me that South Plainfield is the closest one, so I was like, okay. With that information, I looked on the back of the paper, then I started to understand the map, and I'm like, cool, I figured it out. But I'm like, why do that? Why try to like I understand you want to like make things smoother, but if your job is to like you're trying to make it more convenient for you for the sake of seconds, just because you're in that position as a gatekeeper to make me leave, like that's wild. Only for mere convenience because you picked the job that you don't like. I don't know. I just was mad.
I don't know about that one.
I would have to say that yeah, DMV people, they they kind of live to inconvenience. When I passed my road test, I had to go in and I had to like you have to provide your 6 points of documentation and proof of address. So my proof of address, and you can mock me for this. I was like, I'd never been to the DMV before. I obviously I've been there, but not for that. I pulled out an envelope that was mailed to my house, but it was a piece of mail addressed to my mother. But it was my address anyway, and it was the same address that was like on my passport, on my birth certificate.
Were you
so
under 18?
It would be fine. I think I was probably 17. I was probably 17.
They gave you problems for that? And you was under 18?
They said that the proof of address had to have been mailed to me specifically.
Did they knew your age, right?
And the piece of mail, because the mail that I used, it was just a piece of mail that my mom like had in our safe. We keep all our documents like a safe. Like she just has it there to have it as a proof of address. She said that the mail also had to be recent. So I was like, huh. So me and then my uncle who had took me there, he was like, well, crap, we had to go home. And we weren't at one like in town. We were one at like one like a
you
far,
went to
like one that wasn't next door. Yes. So we had to drive. I'm gonna send it to the
That's
location
30
later.
minutes. That's a 30-minute drive.
I know. We drove. My uncle drove me home. We had to run up. I print out a bank statement because that's that's a recent thing that I can print out actively. I don't have to wait for a piece of mail. So I go back. I wait in line. Thankfully, the wait wasn't that bad. And then when we go back, it's a totally different lady, and she didn't even ask for my proof of address. Like,
welcome to
so we're
the
like,
DMV
and it's like,
system.
oh, so the first lady could have like overlooked it because clearly.
Well, you never know. It could have been a new lady, and like she could have got fired later that day.
That lady, I'd seen her a couple of times.
Oh,
like she'd worked there for a bit, so I'm like, oh, so there is something you could have done. You could have maybe not run back, because I said that I'm like, should I go get it and come back? She's like, that would be best. Clearly, that wasn't best. But no, people always say that like if you work in a DMV, they exploit the crap out of their power. But no, like just like with artistry, it's just that if people just didn't like kiss the ground that some of these like creators walked on, it would just a lot of negative situations could be avoided that way.
Interesting.
I feel,
but it's like I feel like I get you from the average fan. It's like you don't really need to idolize this individual so much. But then, like, as soon as you said entertainment field, I thought of like the Harvey Weinstein situation and all these.
Yeah, and then there's people with like less power and wealth and influence than that do those things. The YouTubers, Austin Jones,
I did not even.
heinous.
Oh my god.
Oh my god, we're like minors, the whole nine. It was bad, and like Mans is in jail. That's how bad it got.
No, I feel you. That's how I was feeling with the
and
whole
and
Smash
he only
situation.
had 500,000 subs. Not that that's a small number, but that's like there's bigger creators on the platform, and someone at that level was doing like heinous things like that. I've seen YouTubers with less subs get in trouble for that. So it's like the less stock that's put in creators, I think the better for like things like that, but also for like mental health kind of related things where it's like the pressure doesn't like because some people like collapse under that kind of state.
So where would you draw the line between influencers and creators?
Oh well, a creator is just someone like anyone could be a creator. Not everyone could be an influencer, kind of thing. Where like say I wouldn't say that the three of us are like influencers on a
Oh,
large
speak for
scale.
yourself, brother. But proceed.
Large scale, sir. As
Yeah,
in
I know what you said. You didn't stutter.
large scale. Okay, no. Go ahead. Go
No,
ahead.
no, no, no,
How
no.
do
You can proceed. Like I'll let you speak, and it's like it's cool.
I'll speak for myself then. I'm not an influencer.
Oh, how I wish we were in person.
I'm not an influencer in the sense that my actions won't inspire other people to say, you know what? I'm gonna stop what I'm doing and I want to do things more like him. I don't have that, so I wouldn't classify myself as an influencer because of that. Like that's the criteria I look at it with.
Mm-hmm.
So Regier,
I'm just
go on.
I'm saying like no, it's not like I have a platform to speak to hundreds of thousands of individuals, but you could be an influencer knowing the 5, 10 people you know, and if your actions can affect them and make them try to change or alter in any manner because you have that type of personality or that just the diction in which you speak is able to captivate them and make them be like, oh, that's pretty cool, and switch up what they say, that's influencing to me. I'm not saying
Yeah,
We're
but
here. It's called Twitter.
that's being influential. That's not being an influencer. That's just having the trait of inspiring your peers. But I think once you're getting one, I'd say hundreds. Like I'm not setting the bar too high, but like hundreds, I would say. No, that
Whoa,
is,
whoa,
you are the
whoa,
president
whoa.
of a school club.
I'm just saying, but
But
that's
you influence
20
those
to
under
40
you.
people, individuals that come to that club or interact with that club all the time. He is the de facto leader. He is the head of the like hub of the club. He interacts with multiple people. He's able to make decisions, and people are able to vibe off that. And he's able to influence their lives. And especially during a time such as college, where it's like a club president could make or break someone's college experience.
That would be influential. Well, because what else would I hang on to for that kind of like?
We are going on technicalities here.
Yes. I am going on technicalities.
No. I'm not accusing you. I am literally saying we are going on technicalities here.
No, because
So
let's. Well, what if I said that an influencer would be like that could be your occupation, being an influencer, with
Okay.
with the amount of reach you have.
which I think is fair.
Like what's his name? Prince E. He's allowed to call himself an influencer because he does like inspiration type guru videos on Facebook.
I have no idea who that is, but okay.
I don't know if you recall one of our classes that we had in the building, not the one we usually have class in, but like the one that's like closer to our dorm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they played the video where the guy's like, "I am not black." That one. Him.
Yep.
I hate him, by the way. I was so annoyed that he plays videos, but he can like say, "I'm an influencer," whereas Javon,
Oh no,
you would
he used his
say,
name.
I'm influential. I'm influential. That's totally fair.
Let me get the
But
Carfax on this. An influencer is someone who has the power to affect the purchasing decision of others because his or her authority, knowledge, position, or relationship with his or her audience, following in the distinct niche with whom he or she actively engages. I hear nothing about a number.
all right, but you're not doing that as a club president.
What? Whoa. So if I'm a club president, you think I can't influence or choose, or like a college club president, I can't like affect what textbook my club members buy? You think I can't be?
You've broken him.
Good luck. Good luck with that.
You saying wait? So I can't influence them on what video game to buy if I'm a video game club? That's not a possible thing.
I don't agree.
I mean,
I
you could-
see
you
the
could bring a
definition you're
suggestion.
reading. I don't necessarily agree with it.
But I see. We'll be on technicality, right?
Yes,
broken him,
yes,
Sympathetic.
yes.
You've broken
yes.
him.
On technicalities, yes. That's what I'm going off of. I thought that was clear.
It is. I'm just saying. Here's the technical definition.
Because something like an influencer, it's a very like broad concept. So I'm just narrowing it in a way.
Fair enough. You could establish topicality
As in, like when I'm saying the word, I'm like leaning towards like this idea of it.
Fair enough.
So hold up. Let's bring it back. Let's bring it back for a second. So we're talking about influencers and the real idea that like one argues that anyone could be an influencer. One argues that there's certain standards about being an influencer.
Well, yeah.
So I don't know where I'm going with this, but I was hoping one of you could loop it back.
Well, no. So like, it just circles back to like the creation part because, like I said, anyone can be a creator.
Right.
Like I make paintings, I write, I draw, I am creating. Therefore, I am a creator. But not like clearly not in an occupational sense. I'm not like it's not my job to be a creator. I wish, but that's not how this works. What I was wondering is how are we gonna like years from now sift through like the uptick in like what's being created in this current state of affairs, because as mentioned earlier, way more people are getting into different art forms. Plenty of people are starting YouTube channels. I started too. It's like a lot of people are starting podcasts. Many are getting into streaming. This uptick in like content in general, like what's going to be like the long term for that? Like that,
Mm-hmm.
how are we going to like deal with it? Because like, mind you, like this medium specifically, like just podcasts. I looked it up because I wanted to like get a statistic for the promo art for this podcast. It read that 850,000 podcasts exist, which is a jarring, like mind-blowing number that are like that in circulation that currently air, that like not counting ones that are defunct, right? Or at least the ones that are on a large scale and are defunct. That's a large number. That's a lot of podcasts. That's a lot of people talking for like an hour about a given topic.
Well, that's true. What do you think of? Okay, so let's think about it like this: 7.4. What's the population?
Let's just say 7 billion for simplicity.
Okay, 7 billion for simplicity, even though it's 7 billion like 2 years ago. But 7 billion for simplicity.
Sorry.
Simplicity is you have like not all of them are adults, not all of them are of like age to move around, but like you still have a good 4 to 5 billion that's like they're out there doing whatever they want, and only like almost a million of them like doing a podcast. Like I'm surprised. I thought there would be more. Like, do you mean like in the US? Is that worldwide?
It could have been like, I don't know. It didn't say. But then again, it's also a matter of like how they count that. Like, would a podcast like ours even be in that count?
Oh, that's true.
It depends on the platform, right? Because there are some people who have some unpublished podcasts. There are people who put one podcast on like 5 different mediums. So it's kind of hard to measure exactly how much we can really take that statistic. But I think the thing, like, everything's standardized. It's easy to make a podcast nowadays. Like, look at us. We're just three friends with our own computer mics and a recording software, and we have the power to give our view across the entire world. Granted, it has to get viral first, but like,
Yeah, the only limit really is just the reach.
which is totally understandable. But like, that being said, I highly doubt, without a level of promotion, a level of like inhibition, I don't think that everybody who make a podcast can really be contributory. Because like, if you ask anybody about, like, I don't know, what's a really popular podcast that I'm totally
Joe Rogan podcast.
Yeah, Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan. Yep, Joe Rogan. Like, if I say Joe Rogan, everyone knows, like, oh god, oh no. So, or you may actually listen to that, in which case I'm not judging you, but I totally am.
You don't like
But-
Joe Rogan, really?
I never said I didn't like Joe
I
Rogan.
don't listen to Joe Rogan's podcast personally.
Is
I
it
wouldn't
because
say
you
I
don't
dislike
like it,
him.
or because you're just indifferent? You're just like meh.
Meh.
Look, there's one thing about Turning the Frogs Gay, and I decided not to watch it. That's
No,
all
no,
I'm
no,
gonna
no,
say.
no. That's Alex Jones. That's Infowars. That's not Joe Rogan.
Oh, I got the two confused.
Yeah, no, but Infowars isn't a podcast. That's like a it's more akin to like a syndicated news show, but like on the internet.
Oh, that's
Oh.
okay. Okay,
Yeah, no, we
Then
do
Joe-
not rate Infowars. Please do not take that. Do not take
Then-
Alex Jones seriously. But no,
then
Joe
Joe Rogan,
Rogan's
I-
podcast, I don't really take to. I don't know. Like it's an extremely popular podcast. Not really my thing. Can't explain
Fair.
why, but you know that is. Whoa! I'm being called. That's horrifying. Regardless,
Ew, who calls people these days?
I know, right?
Wow, imagine having a phone and now calling people.
No, it's like, but regardless, let me just text the person and be like, "Hey, I'm busy." But so with that large amount of podcasts, it's like just in this medium alone, to get to like the level of say like a Joe Rogan podcast would take a lot, and it's not like you need to get to that level to like see a return on it, but
Mhm.
with it's like a lot of the reasons that people give for not going into a field that they want to get into, like say someone really wants to get into podcasting or get into like doing videos on YouTube or just creating in general, they're like, oh, there's just so many like YouTube channels, streamers, and podcasts already. It's like mine wouldn't stand out. But in this day and age, it's like people have the time, so they're just going to create it. So how much do they buy into that idea of, oh, there's just so many, why bother? Because like now they're doing it, they're making it.
I feel like for a lot of people, doing a podcast is something that's been on their list for a long time, and they just never got to it. And due to COVID, which is the era that we're currently living in right now, you suddenly have a ton of time available, whether you want to admit it or not. So I feel like now there's such an uptick because in the era of Zoom University, you need a mic, you need a computer, and you need friends. Well, ideally. And it's become so easy for people to use the resources that they already have and take that and redirect it towards making, I don't know, a podcast or finally making a song that they want to do if they're musically inclined, like I'm not. And it's interesting because I don't think it was the issue of interest. People may have always been interested. And I'm not just talking about podcasts. I'm talking about anything remotely artistic in general that people can do. But just due to the circumstances that people have right now, it just happens to be that people are realizing that apps exist where they can record their own podcasts, or people are getting together with their friends and saying, "Hey, let's create a podcast. I want the internet to hear or see what I have to hear," and people are just not realizing that there's power within a podcast because chances are they start listening to them after quarantine started, and now they want to contribute. That's been my case. So I've been narrating.
Rigier.
Oh no, it's. I'm thinking. I just got lost in thought because as y'all was talking, I just started thinking about how like it's like opportunity cost. Like yeah, we have the free time, so the opportunity cost went down, but still, that's one of those things where it's like pursuing something like a podcast or a YouTube channel and stuff is fear. It's inhibition. It's it's all these things that come back to you when it's like, yeah, we could do this for like if we're doing it for fun, like yeah, it's for kicks, haha. But like, no, I don't think anyone's gonna like quit their day job even though they got fired from their day job because of COVID to start doing something like an artsy podcast form. It's just it's just fear. I'm attributing most of it to fear and ambitions. That's all.
Ooh,
Fear is
that hit close
powerful.
to home. Fear is powerful. It's it's an interesting force. So I'm of the
Says
belief that we create our own fears.
says Kendrick Lamar. That's a good song by him, by the way. The song Fear.
Fair. But like I was saying, like I'm of the opinion that we create our own fears, and or a majority of our fears. Like the majority
Oh
of our
yeah,
fears are internal.
yeah, for sure. A lot of like insecurities and of at least related to let me specify related to like trying new things or like investing your time and effort into things. It's kind of like
Mm.
there is that layer of like defensiveness you put up because like say it doesn't pan out or it doesn't work out. It's like you don't want to face that it didn't work out at times. So it's like, oh well, it didn't work out because of this, or it wouldn't work out presumably because of this. So you don't have. So it's like a defense mechanism,
Well,
I would say.
well, yeah, it is. Is that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, it is a defense mechanism, and it's interesting how we like everyone's like, oh yeah, everything's possible, nothing's impossible, you can do it. But
Like that's
at the same
technic
time,
that like that's technically correct,
No,
but
no, no, it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not.
well, yeah, no. I always give like the smart ass response like I can't fly,
But no, I don't
I
even mean
can't.
you can't fly. But like, that's like me saying like, yeah, as like the odds of me winning the lottery, I could do that, but it's astronomically low. The odds of me
th-
becoming the next like multi-billionaire, I believe, are astronomically low. Possible, yes.
The chance is there.
I hate how but it's like we put so much faith in this meritocracy that we call the American dream, but it's not really a meritocracy. Like, I hate to say it, but like if I growing up in inner city schools, your odds are lower. Uh,
True.
being of a minority,
true.
your odds are lower. It's all like, yeah, I can work harder, but it's like, what happens if I still don't make it with me adding to my chances? Because all I'm doing is adding to my percentage of victory. There's no way for me to make it 100%. And if I'm unlucky, what do you say then? I didn't try hard enough?
Yeah, it's funny you said that. Like, you mentioned putting faith because like people like you'll have someone that'll be like, oh, I don't want to do this because like this and this, but then they'll put like stock and like faith into something that's like way more ludicrous. Like
Hmm.
I think having a goal like I'm gonna start a podcast or I'm gonna try and make a successful like YouTube channel. That seems more realistic than say I'm gonna be the next Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos. You know?
Ah, it just makes me think about parents and like as soon as like that was said, I just we're like, nah, man, you're going to become like you need to be a millionaire, billionaire. I'm like, what if I'm okay with just a couple $100,000? Like, what's so wrong with that?
What's wrong with living comfortable?
Yeah, what's some of them comfortable? Like,
Like
a wife and kids. And
there's
like,
living to there's like aspiring to live in comfort and then there's aspiring to have comfort in excess.
Oh.
Like, do you need a garage full of cars? No. Is it impressive if you can have a garage full of cars? To some people, yes. But then
Fair.
again, you don't need that many cars.
I don't know. That's what you want. Like, I know for me, like, I'm probably going to put a lot of money into some fuckery because, like, I know it's not going to be worth it. But, like, I don't know. I don't put as much stock as into cars as others. But, like,
See, I feel like Radir says that, and then I'm gonna read a news article about him somehow managing to crush cars to the second floor of the business building, and then he's gonna be like the excerpt is gonna be like, hey, what'd you do? I don't know, man. I was just having fun.
You better plug this podcast if that happens.
that's
when,
not.
when that happens, not if that happens. We've
No,
already
it's
established.
funny. I was
it's going
talking about this on my podcast the other week. Hey.
Man, and then it's like, there goes
Oh my
my
God.
case in court.
Imagine like I think for me lately, am I say like with me, I'm like my name Sabitica kind of like it's a play on like cynical kind of. I'm a very cynical person. I'm very like quick to shoot something down
Mhm.
as a defense mechanism. But I'm a very cynical person. But lately, I've been kind of letting my mind go and letting myself like be more. I'm trying to find the term, but like let my like hopes and like I've been letting myself have hopes, right? Like I think, oh, like with my YouTube channel of this name, like oh, imagine if this like gets successful, like how that plays out. I've been letting myself lately like indulge that fantasy, you know?
So you've been like more optimistic, would you say?
Yeah. Yeah, it's optimism. Definitely a higher level optimism. Like I'm thinking like, oh, if like about this podcast, like, oh, this can take off and then like imagine like it's to a point of like income. Like I'm letting my mind run with it. Like the concept. Whereas
That's fair.
whereas before, like say in like high school, I'd be like, oh yeah, I just do it for fun. I don't care if it takes off or not. Like this, I do for fun. I do anything creative I do for fun because I want to do it. But part of me is like,
Mhm.
I'm gonna see how far I can take this thing,
That's
if at all.
funny thinking about how like as a child, I know what a lot of people's like as a child you don't know what shame is. That's why when someone be like, "Hey, I need you to put together this like I need you to move these bricks over there," the child start like throwing the blocks across the room to win because no shame. You don't have a sense of like, "Oh, that's wrong." And I feel like the older you get, the more you develop that. And that's why I kind of feel like usually innovations come from younger people, not older people. But when
Yeah,
you say that, it's just funny to be like, oh, as I got older, it's more like, that's when I not to give a fuck. But that's because like popular culture, phones, and exposure at a younger age, where it's like you get introduced to the rules of society, although not very properly at a younger age nowadays, where it's like, yeah, shoot, 9 year olds are kind of fairly aware of what sex is at this point, not being told by like family members, but more like, oh, this girl and
I'm
this boy look
terrified of
like
that notion.
it's just, but it's like that's the reality we live in. Like it's just like
This is
anything.
true.
Any information is like we say this like, but we live in the age of smartphones, where it's like anything I want to know, I can search up. Movies say it all the time. TV shows say it all the time. We're stopping a kid from typing up what he just heard.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah. That's an interesting point. And it's interesting because like technology is so easily accessible from the time the kid is born nowadays. And I feel like we've talked about this before off the camera, but like what do you call it? A lot of my little cousins and a lot of people who I know who have kids, they're like parents just give them the iPad so they can get some peace and quiet. And while that might seem innocent in and of itself, what's the true cost here? What are you really giving up or corrupting now for a little bit of peace?
definitely the rise in like technology and like how it's manifesting in our generation. It leads to easier accessibility to both content itself and the creation of content. Like there's a YouTuber I watch, Cinemassacre,
Mm.
James Rolfe. He's been on the platform for ages. He was even making content before YouTube existed. That's how long he's been making like online content. He has a video called Cinemassacre 200. If you're into filmmaking at all, watch it. It's a good video. He basically talks about how his process for making his movies evolved from like when he started as like when he was a kid in the 80s making movies to like now. And then hearing him describe his process of like shooting to a VHS tape and then recording it on a DVR and then like recording that into a second generation tape and then like editing the VHS thing with scissors. It's like if I was born in the 80s, because I'm into like video editing and stuff, I'm thinking, wow, computers make this so much easier. Because
Literally.
and like it makes you think like how they made movies like at all before computers. Because Jesus Christ, it's
No, it's the same
look
way
into
how
it.
you look at.
It's actually really interesting how they did it back then. But it's like that level of ease and like user friendliness. Like nowadays, if someone wants to make good videos, they just have to like not to like be loyal to like a brand, but like buy a MacBook, you're good to go because that comes with all you need. It's got iMovie, which is like an amazing free software for what it is.
Hmm.
And then, there's plenty of free programs out there. Even in Windows, buy a laptop that has like decent memory, get DaVinci Resolve, you're up and running. It's so easy.
True. The free like DaVinci Resolve is such a good program, like for being free.
No, it being
Come.
free is a steal, honestly.
But it's the same way how like if you ever like you have to go back and watch how they did Lion King, because Lion King was one of the last major movies, like Disney movies, that they animated all by hand. And when you see like the famous scene with the buffalo, like and all that, like I'm telling you, when you see how
No,
like
yeah.
that took an
Mhm.
instrument, oh my god, too much time,
Oh my
too
god.
much time that they spent on that, but it came out amazing.
Yeah, of course, it paid off. It was like the highest grossing animated film before Frozen came out. Like it paid back exponentially in dividends.
Even though it just was like a rip off of Hamlet, it was like this is the amount of time they put in. Okay,
Yeah,
we
not
can,
rip
I
off,
mean, we can get into
based,
this in another
it
podcast,
loosely
but it's not a
based.
rip off. It's an allegory. It's like a retelling of it.
it's an influence.
It's
of-
like saying Clueless is a rip off of the Jane Austen story Emma.
Fair, heavy influenced.
Well, no, not influence. It flat out is the story, but it's not a rip off. It's like a retelling or like a reimagining of the concept.
What's the difference between a rip off and a retelling? Credit, how well it's perceived.
I think intent.
I think the
'Cause,
intent
like,
for Lion King was to make as much money as possible.
But because I think a ripoff is like they try to not wear the influence on the sleeve. Where it's like watch any behind the scenes making of Lion Kings, they tell you up front it's Hamlet. Like they never shy from the fact that it's based on Hamlet.
Fair.
True. And I felt stupid for the longest time. I did not realize that, and then it wasn't until I got into my I knew it by the time I got to my senior year. But I walked into my senior year literature class in high school, and I just remember my professor or my teacher saying, "Listen, we're starting Hamlet today, and if any one of you idiots mentions anything about the Lion King, I am taking points off your final paper." And everyone just
That's funny. That's funny.
And it wasn't until that, and of course, like the natural idiot that I am, I'm like, "Oh, I need to do some research on this." And then in the middle of class, while I'm on my computer, I just blurt out, "Wait, Scar is Claudius?" And everyone was just like laughing.
Yeah, no, it's like one of those things where it's like the general public is aware of it,
Oh,
but there's that group that won't catch on. It took me a minute to catch on to it too.
yeah. I mean, the first time I watched Lion King was like what? When I was like 5.
Oh,
Yeah, true.
oh my god! I watched
I-
Lion
I-
King way later than y'all.
Way before 5. It was always there.
Like all I remember is "It means no worries for the rest of your days," and it's just like that's all I remember.
Song. I hate that song so friggin' much. Oh my god.
Why do you hate Hakuna Matata? I don't
It's
understand.
annoying. It was played out. I don't know.
Oh my god.
I think "Be Prepared" is an amazing song.
Be Prepared is an amazing song.
Why couldn't that have been the song everyone's saying? Friggin' Hakuna Matata.
Because I can't hit those goddamn notes.
Oh
I'm
my-
the cynical one.
No,
I'm the
I like
cynical
the
one. Can you
remake
tell?
version of Akuma Matata though. I like the remake version.
We are not going to talk about anything with the remake version today.
No,
We can talk about it
no.
another time. We can get
Episode
into
2,
that
baby.
another time.
Speaking of, you think we should wrap it up? We've been going on for about an hour and 10 minutes.
Well, no. Let's circle back a bit. So, with the
Sure thing.
with that notion of the sea of content, podcasts alone, with how much there is,
Mhm.
with us here, starting this up here, the Susurrus podcast. What are we hoping to get out of this experience, of however long we decide to do this?
Not to be bored.
Fair.
You hope to
Well, I
be
don't
bored
know.
doing this?
No,
I said
hope not to be bored.
Hope not to be bored.
I don't know. So context. The other two hosts of this podcast and I are all dear friends. We all lived in college together, and
Lived
because of
past
this,
tense will
Yep.
hopefully next
Yep.
semester will be different.
hopefully. But I mean, for me, it's a way to connect back with you guys and just talk deeply about certain things and certain concepts which otherwise would have been left in the dark.
Love
And- But no, I mean, as long I would just like it's a podcast, right? So we can be creators and feel like we're doing something, even if it's just for ourselves.
I think for me, I'm hoping that people that do stumble upon this, and even the friends that we do share, that we recommend this to.
Oh, you
I
plan on
find
doing
that
that?
no, no, like maybe like the one or two friends of mine that like get that get it. Not like I'm not gonna just post it on my Instagram or anything like that, but I think that for the people that find it, I find that the conversations that we have when we are talking about important things, or or when we're having passion discussions, it's like either a point of view is brought up, or just the way in which one of us will address a certain topic. It's like I want a broader network of people to hear it, or like hear how it is that we engage in certain conversations or in certain topics.
Mm.
Like I want us heard. That's what I'm hoping to get out of it. Big hope, big ask. But
Hey,
I
we'll work
I
towards
I
it.
feel like we have something to say. Whether you guys want to believe it or not, we do have something to say when provoked, when prompted.
Well, I feel like that's everyone. I don't know.
Talk about it specifically, but sure, you're right.
I'm just saying.
This is the Susurrus podcast, not the Everyone podcast.
Yeah. I don't see. I only see 3 names under that hosted by section there.
Okay.
But I think that's the best thing. We have no expectations about this, or we have expectations that we think are attainable. We're not going for fame, but we just want to let our voices be heard.
This podcast is
I
like our
think-
child now.
Okay, I think this is where I'm calling it quits.
This is our no, like
Too much commitment.
it's
Too
our-
much commitment.
it's our creation.
I can't pay child support.
Nah, this ain't-
I have a tasteless joke. Let's stop it here.
Let's stop
I
before
may get a bit-
he says something stupid.
Oh, snap.
Alrighty then.
It made me think of that Dave Chappelle joke, and that never ends well.
Well, I mean, Dave Chappelle people
Right.
do like.
Wrap it up for us, Medica.
Well, there are approximately 850,000 podcasts in circulation, and when one speaks to a smaller audience, their words can become whispers. In the grand scheme of things, those whispers can be described as susurrations. This has been the Susurrus podcast, and signing us out, I'm your host, Simbitica.
I'm your other host, Ray Sonar.
And I am the Force captive, Idire.
And we'll see you next time.